or good evening, or wherever you happen to be. We're delighted wherever you are joining us from. My name is Will Trevor. I am the Assistant Dean and Director of Online Programs here at Albany Law School. I'm delighted to welcome you to our Thursday webinar, Blockchain and Cryptocurrency, the Legal Framework and Future Trends. If you want to find out a bit more about our programs, give us an email, graduateadmissions@albanylaw.edu, or our number is 518-390-0261. Next slide, please. Now, our next event, we've been holding a number of events recently. We like to give you events that are covering relevant topics and also ones that are interesting and have relevant and expert panelists. Our next one is going to be on St. Patrick's Day, Wednesday, March the 17th. Time is 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock Eastern time. This one is going to be Pathways to the Future, Emerging Trends in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy Law and Policy. As with all of these events of this type, it's a free one, bringing together a group of distinguished experts, attorneys, thought leaders, leaders in the field of cybersecurity and data privacy. So that time and date again, March the 17th, 2021, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., and that's Eastern time, and it'll be via Zoom. And my colleague Nicole has already posted a link a couple of times into chat for you. Next slide, please. So I just want to tell you about some of our online programs. We have a number of online graduate programs, 100% online. Financial compliance and risk management, we launched last year. Our next start for this one, if you're interested, we have 6 starts a year, two in the spring, 2 in the summer, 2 in the fall, but our next one will be spring 2, which will be March the 22nd. The deadline for an application for that is March the 15th. It's a certificate, it's a master's, and it's an LLM. The certificate, 9 credits, the master's 30, and the LLM, if you've got a JD, is 24 credits, and you can complete those in as little as 12 months, or you can take a little bit longer if you want to. But it's a flexible program, and it's meant to meet your career needs. Most importantly, however, it has been designed and it is taught by industry professionals. And something that you're going to find out a little bit more about a little bit later is we have included, and this will be from spring 2, a new course in understanding blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and the law. So if you're in that sort of financial compliance type role with a bank or a financial institution, then this particular qualification is intended to help you really to take the next level in terms of your career. Give us a call, 518-390-0261, or graduateadmissions@albanylaw.edu. And now just a short video about our cybersecurity and data privacy program.
Hi, I am Dean Anthony Haynes, and I created the Cybersecurity and Data Privacy program at Albany Law School to help professionals like you advance their career.
Law.com reports that data privacy and cybersecurity officers are in high demand with little competition, and IAPP reports that 42% of all cybersecurity and privacy professionals hold a professional degree. Click below to learn more, and we look forward to speaking with you about how Albany Law School will help you advance your career to the next level.
I'd just like to say that in real life, Anthony's voice and his mouth movements do actually synchronize. But hey, if you're interested in our cybersecurity and data privacy program, again, a certificate, a master's, an LLM, Nicole has posted the contact details into the chat box there. So let's introduce the panelists to you. So our first panelist is Josh Garcia. Josh is a partner at Quetzal. He's worked closely with developers, funds, exchanges, and investors in the fintech and blockchain space for the past 6 years. His counsel draws from experience at tech-forward international law firms Cooley, White and Case and Goodwin Procter. Now, as a recognized thought leader, he has been published in CoinDesk, Coin Center, the Bitcoin magazine, and he's counseled and presented to the Money Transmitter Regulators Association, the New York City Bar Association, Congressional Hill staffers, Rhode Island state regulators, the Israel Securities Authority, and at various industry events. His expertise spans legal, financial, and regulatory topics with a focus on securities, commodities, lending, consumer protection, and payments law. And if he's not busy enough already, he also co-teaches a course on blockchain and the law at the University of Michigan Law School. Josh, welcome to you. Next slide. And also, we're delighted to introduce you to Debbie Hoffman, who is alumna from 1996. Debbie's an adjunct professor here at Albany Law School. She is going to be teaching the upcoming graduate program course, Understanding Blockchain, Cryptocurrencies and the Law. She's the founder and CEO of Symmetry Blockchain Advisors, where she focuses on endeavors related to the education, strategy, and implementation of blockchain solutions. With her experience in financial services, law, and technology innovation, Debbie brings a unique perspective to blockchain innovation. Debbie was previously Chief Legal Officer at Digital Risk and a finance attorney at Thatcher, Proffitt and Wood in New York. She served as a professor at Barry Law School, Florida A&M, University College of Law, and the University of Central Florida. Debbie, welcome to you and thanks for joining us. And our next panelist, Sean Keefe. Sean is founder and managing partner at Straight Up Capital. While at Colorado Law, Sean was an active member in the Boulder Tech and venture capital community. Now, while serving as the executive chair of the transactional division of the law school, Sean and his partner won the National Intellectual Property Transactional Law Meets competition. He's helped teach in the interdisciplinary telecom program, teaching graduate level engineering classes in telecom business and strategy and telecom policy and regulation. He's the founding board of directors he is a founding member, I think that's what it's meant to say, of the board of directors on the Diversity and Blockchain Philly chapter. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for joining us. And next slide, Jimmy Nguyen. Jimmy has come and spoken to us before and is always a welcome speaker. One of the world's leading Bitcoin advocates. Jimmy is the founding president of the Bitcoin Association, a Switzerland-based global industry organization that works to advance business on the Bitcoin SV blockchain. Now, Bitcoin SV is the only project dedicated to the original design protocol and the Satoshi vision of Bitcoin's pseudonymous creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. It is massively scaling to be the world's one blockchain for global enterprise applications and for BSV to be the world's digital currency. Previously, Jimmy was CEO of N-Chain Group, the worldwide leader in advisory, research, and development of blockchain technologies, and was chair of its strategic advisory board. Jimmy, welcome to you. Next slide, we have Daniel Stabile. Dan is a partner in the Miami office of Schutz & Bowen, LLP. He's a leading attorney in the distributed ledger and digital asset spaces. He's advised issuers of native tokens, digital currency exchanges, cryptocurrency broker-dealers, digital currency ATM businesses, virtual currency mining operations, and cryptocurrency tax reporting businesses. He has also advised banks, brokers, and other institutions, such as real estate development companies, in regards to their implementation of blockchain technology. Daniel is co-author of Digital Assets and Blockchain Technology, US Law and Regulation, a first of its kind legal textbook designed for law and other graduate level students. Daniel, welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to all of your panelists. If I could ask you all to turn on your cameras. There's Jimmy, there's Debbie, there's Daniel, there's Josh. Not sure where Sean is. Sean's been having a few issues. So Sean, we will make a start, and as soon as you've been able to sort your things out, then please do join us. So folks, if you can see below there, and here I'm talking to the audience, there's a Q&A. And what we would like you to do is to post your questions into that Q&A. We're going to do a couple of things here. We've got some questions that we've previously agreed on, and we also want to crowdsource the questions from you. So my first question, I think we should always start off by defining our terms. There's a lot of jargon here. I'm sort of going to
Will.
Hello.
Yes. Are you the host? Can you share? It says that you have turned off the start video.
Okay, Sean, we can.
Oh,
There.
all right. Are we okay?
There we go. Okay, your sound is not great, Sean, so I recommend you go to mute. So let's start off with that first question. And let's go to Jimmy. Jimmy, I want to start off by defining some terms. What are we talking about when we're discussing things like blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin?
Well, Will, first of all, thanks for having me on again. Always a pleasure to talk to your audience. Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital currencies is the term I prefer instead of cryptocurrencies. Sound very new to people, but they really combine concepts that have existed for a long time. First, there was an effort to create electronic cash, a way to send value across the internet and through digital means. Starting in the 1980s and 1990s, there was DigiCash in 1989 and something called eGold that launched in 1996. So the idea of an electronic way to more efficiently send monetary value is not new. And blockchains are simply a form of ledger, a record-keeping system to record transactions of payments, but as we'll learn today, also data, which can be used to create much more powerful business applications, such as smart contracts or tokens of other assets. The difference between a blockchain and a normal ledger is that it's kept not just by one person, such as you, Will, or your bank, but by many people, such as all of the speakers on this webinar, so that no one person controls the ledger and that it is open to verification and confirmation by many participating keepers of the ledger. So Bitcoin emerged in 2008 by the posting of a white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto to introduce itself as another attempt to create electronic cash after the failed attempts in prior years. And it defines itself as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So I should be able to use it to send to Sean anywhere in the world instantly any amount of money. It was designed to be used as electronic cash, meaning in daily life. And the Bitcoin white paper described its goal, which was to create a more efficient way to send internet commerce payments, including for small casual transactions. Because when the internet was created, we have ways to send data, email, websites, do these Zoom videos, but there was not a native way to create payments. And so we had to layer on PayPal, credit card processing, and that requires additional fees and people in the middle. So Bitcoin is designed to create a way where we could all send each other and to merchants and businesses money value instantly for very low fees. And that's why it emerged. After a period of time, Bitcoin did not scale bigger, meaning its capacity to handle large amounts of transactions did not increase. And then people started creating other blockchain and cryptocurrency projects to achieve goals they had hoped to create on the Bitcoin ledger, but were not able to. So we've now moved into a world where there's over 5,000 different cryptocurrencies, many of which have different functions, some to send payments, some to do smart contracts and tokens, and they all operate with some version of, maybe not all a blockchain, but some ledger system that records transactions of payments and even data information across multiple keepers of the ledger is the best way to understand it. So that's the world we live in today. And that's why we have so many cryptocurrencies, or as I prefer to call them, digital currencies, and why there's even more than one Bitcoin. We support, as you mentioned, Bitcoin SV, BSV, but there's several other competing versions out there.
Thanks, Jimmy. 5,000, I had no idea. Debbie, can you help us with defining some of these terms?
Sure. So I'm going to take it down even, well, I think Jimmy gave a great overview, but just for those of you that may not even know the interplay between the two. So blockchain is the underlying protocol on which all these cryptocurrencies are built. And one of the key takeaways, if you know nothing else about Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrencies, is that you should be able to, the definition of the two are different, and that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies or digital currencies are exchange of value using blockchain type protocols, and each one is built, each cryptocurrency, each digital currency is built on a slightly different type of blockchain ledger, so that we want to make sure that you don't walk away and say, well, Bitcoin is, it's basically anonymous. You can't tell necessarily, track back who the person is. That's not the way all blockchain ledgers can be built. So each cryptocurrency has its own type of unique set of technology features that you can add in or take away from or build customized to the way you want your protocol to work. So that's all I'm going to say, because I think that's just such an important point to understand.
Okay, thank you. Daniel, do you want, we're developing our definitions here. Is there anything you want to add to what we've said already?
Jimmy and Debbie said it quite nicely, and good to be with you and the audience. Well, let me just stress one concept that I think is really critical here. And Jimmy touched on it, but I don't want it to be lost in the shuffle. And that is, to me, the animating principle behind Bitcoin and all of blockchain technology is the removal of the need for a trusted third-party intermediary. So that is right there in the text of Satoshi Nakamoto's famed 2008 white paper, which is really the big bang moment for cryptocurrencies. And one of the keys to unlocking what's going on here with blockchain technology and digital currency is that there were a number of ideological principles that motivated the launch of Bitcoin and distributed ledger technology. It's not necessarily a coincidence that the white paper was released on Halloween 2008, just around the time of the Lehman Brothers collapse. And this the two coinciding of the onset of the Great Recession and the launch of cryptocurrency really allowed some of the ideological motivations for Bitcoin to come into the public consciousness, such as there are some early adopters of Bitcoin who were concerned with a central government's ability to play with monetary policy. There were some who were concerned about inflation. There were some that were concerned about privacy and the increasing prominence and too big to fail nature of the global financial institutions. So we've come a long way from 2008, and obviously many of these financial institutions themselves that were sort of in the crosshairs of some of the early adopters themselves have now adopted the technology. But I do think that that is really a key piece of understanding blockchain.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Josh, are we in a sort of Betamax VHS state at the moment, just to date myself, in terms of all of these competing cryptocurrencies? Are we ever going to come to a position where we have an accepted standard, an accepted form of cryptocurrency, or are we always likely to see these sort of varieties and different cryptocurrencies?
You won't need to. So to draw that line between the two between any coin and any other coin, because there are people who worried already that we're going to enter into that kind of situation where, you know, we'll argue that one cryptocurrency is going to be the one that's going to dominate versus another. The industry is very iterative, and when it sees a problem, it attacks it with some sort of tech solution. And so it saw this problem, and you've had multiple projects that worked on what's called cross-chain or intercoin protocols, so that you don't have to worry about whether you're using one coin or another. You know, it's sort of like if Betamax or VHS could be played on a single player, right? That's kind of what's going on with protocols like Polkadot or Cosmos or some of these other protocols out there that are designed to allow for interconnectivity between blockchains. So any problem that you can think of, there's somebody working on an answer for it. And that's the beauty of this space, is people are so excited about this original idea of decentralization and disintermediation that they've use these base levels of code, the Bitcoin blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, other blockchains, what isn't called layer 1 protocols. You guys might, if you continue to educate yourself on this, you'll see that term used over and over again, layer 1. And they've built on those, they've added to layer 2 protocols, which interact with that base layer of code. And those layer 2 protocols are where you get a lot of really exciting ideas. For instance, like strange things like credit scoring on chain, or on-chain lending, or faster payments, because the Bitcoin network is a little bit slow. There's a range of projects and products out there that exist today and work today that have solved some of these issues. So I guarantee you, any sort of problem identified, there's 2 or 3 teams working on it.
All right, thanks, Josh. Sean, come to you. Hope your audio's gonna hold up. I'll give you one of the questions from the Q&As, which kind of builds up on what we just mentioned. Is there potential for a specific cryptocurrency to take over paper money?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can, actually, that sounds much better.
Good, okay, good, I thought so. All right, well, so while I spent all that time figuring out my audio, can you run the question by me again? A specific cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so this is one of the questions in the Q&A from an anonymous attendee. They're saying, is there potential for a specific cryptocurrency to take over paper money?
Well, I think over a long enough timeline, it's inevitable that will happen. It'll certainly take decades to actually get to that point. But, in the same way that we went from horse and buggy to the automobile, we're kind of doing the same thing with digital transactions compared to paper money. So there certainly will be a cryptocurrency or multiple cryptocurrencies. However, I think paper money will still be around for at least the foreseeable future.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Debbie, I'm going to start with you on this one. There's a couple of parts to this question. This was a question that was put on the LinkedIn page by Miguel Adames. I'm sorry, I probably totally mispronounced that. But is the use of cryptocurrencies legal? How are they regulated? Who regulates them? How successful is that regulation? And are there any significant legislative initiatives currently underway? So that gets to the crux of really what we want to think about here.
I'm just laughing because that's a really loaded question, and it's, I'll start with a few thoughts about it, and then I'm sure everybody has thoughts on it. So is it legal? So it's like everything else. When you ask that question, there's a lot of ands, ifs, or buts. There's laws all over the world that regulate cryptocurrency in different ways, and there's a lot of different, I think a lot about the money transmission laws, because that's kind of the most basic way to think about it, but there's all kinds of other laws that come into play, like, securities laws, taxation laws. I mean, you can think about it from if you were to go through every different aspect of laws, there's different ways that they can be applied. So we don't necessarily have a wide variety of guidance yet in the US. We have some. Other countries around the world are leading in some of their guidance. Some is not really that much of it is lawmaking per se, is regulatory oversight or enforcement actions that we learn from. There's also not a lot of precedential case law, either common law. So is the use of cryptocurrency legal? And it depends on the use and how you're using it, and so yeah, there are legal ways to use it, but there are also illegal ways to use it. So yes, it's legal per se. How is it regulated? I just talked about that. And then how successful is the regulation? Well, that I think that there's pros and cons to that. So there's this question a lot of attorneys talk about as to how much is overregulation versus how much guidance do we need. So we absolutely need some guidance. And so is the regulation successful? To some degree, yes. But there's also times when we see the regulatory bodies moving in a way that the lawyers who are in this area get concerned about, because it might be over-regulation to the extent that we aren't able to grow, or there's something that they're not necessarily seeing, or we don't even see it yet because we don't know of all the use cases in the world. So I always talk about the fact that this is an incredible area to be a lawyer in, because we don't have all the answers. And so we're learning along with the regulators, because the innovation is happening simultaneously as the regulation is happening. So that's kind of my overall global answer. And I'm sure that everybody else is chomping at the bit to give their 2 cents on this as well.
Sure, yeah. I'm going to pick on the attorneys. Yeah, I know Sean and Jimmy are both JDs, but I'm going to pick on the attorneys first. Daniel, so the issue of regulation, is it legal? What are the emerging regulatory issues that we're seeing and being dealt with?
Well, as usual, Debbie put it clearly. Let me see if I can add a little bit to that. So absolutely, in the United States, Will, no one is going to put you in jail for buying your cup of coffee with Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. You're safe, my friend. However, as Debbie said, certain uses of cryptocurrency is illegal. You can't use it to extort people, for example. You can't use it to obtain a ransom. But I think more importantly, for purposes of this discussion, is that different businesses that deal with cryptocurrencies are regulated in different ways, depending on what they're doing. So a lot of types of virtual currency businesses, let's say a Bitcoin ATM company, these are popping up all over the world. You go to your gas station, you put in dollars, and you get Bitcoin sent to your wallet. They're regulated on a state level and also on a federal level. So as money transmitters, as Debbie suggested. There's also a lot of cryptocurrency, digital asset businesses that are essentially acting as securities broker dealers. So the SEC comes involved. There are some businesses that are dealing with cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin that have been deemed commodities. So we have a federal regulator in the United States called the CFTC. So we could spend many hours talking about this, but big picture is in the United States, there's federal regulation and there's state regulation. And there's a myriad of federal regulators that get involved. And there are regulations of one kind or another in virtually every US state or territory. The final thing that I'll say is, I think the overarching trend is there's a recognition by the regulators that we've passed a tipping point, and blockchain technology in one form or another is here to stay. So you see major regulators like the OCC, one of our very important banking regulators in the United States, saying that financial institutions can take custody of crypto assets. You have the Department of Justice, our main federal criminal law enforcement body, offering a lot of guidance and explanation of how it will apply some of the existing laws and regulations to the new technology. So virtually every regulator in the United States and the world now is confronting these issues. And the regulation is frankly in a very messy state in the United States, certainly, but gradually we're starting to see more clarity.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Josh, just to build on what Daniel said there, he said we've reached a tipping point. So, where are we in terms of the regulatory impact of this?
Yeah, I think the question is maybe answered best by providing some of the human element here, right? So I want you all to think about just how many people are involved and work at all these regulators, and how there's 6 people or 5 people who are in the space who are on this panel now who know quite a bit, but none of us really know everything. I've been in this industry 7 years, and it's extremely difficult to keep up with the technology as it changes. And regulators work 40-hour weeks, right? At the federal government, at the state level. They don't have a tremendous amount of time to commit to the study of blockchain technology. And so think of all the regulators that Daniel just mentioned, like the SEC, the CFTC, OCC, IRS, the DOJ, FBI, at the state level, all the banking and lending regulators. Like those folks, there's a lot of people who work at these places. And 2 years ago, I gave a presentation to the NMLS, which is a state, essentially state banking regulators, state money transmitter regulators. They have a conference every year. And I was presenting on DEXs, on decentralized exchanges, and a little bit on how centralized exchanges work. And for some of them, it was the first time getting kind of like an in-depth dive into that technology, which at that point had already been around for 2 years. And so 2 years from now, state regulators might get someone teaching them about NFTs or what's happening with DeFi lending and DeFi protocols, right? And even then, it's going to be their first time hearing it, and there's going to be so many of them. There's going to be so much confusion, and it's just going to take time for that knowledge to accumulate to a point where you have sensible regulation, sensible enforcement that comes out. There's just going to be a lot of confusion at the state level for years, just because of the human element, just because it takes time to learn about this stuff, and it takes time to get educated. So I just want to point that part out. I think for that reason, I wouldn't say we're at a tipping point. There's just this like rolling, like snowballing kind of effect. And at some point, the snowball is going to be so big that it's going to be undeniable, and state regulators will have to address it. And maybe there will be a push for some sort of like consistency across state laws, which is what some people are talking about, at least at CSBS, which is the Conference for State Bank Supervisors. So there, but it's not quite there yet. I think it's still snowballing, is what I would say.
Okay, thank you. I want to go to some of the Q&As that we've got here, and I'll bring these to Jimmy first and then to Sean. Philip Hackey says, I'd like the panel to address their perspectives regarding Janet Yellen, US Secretary of the Treasury, her comments on Monday that Bitcoin is an extremely inefficient way to conduct monetary transactions, specifically in line of legitimacy and stability aspects. What aspects of the current environment is likely to be strengthened or regulated to improve both respects?
Well, I absolutely agree with Janet Yellen and saying that Bitcoin is an extremely inefficient way to process transactions. If she's referring to BTC, which is the dominant ticker symbol for Bitcoin that people see in the news, it's the one that's risen up to 40, 50,000 US dollars worth of value. It's inefficient because, as I mentioned earlier, the Bitcoin protocol developers that took control of that network chose not to scale the network. So it only does on-chain 7 transactions a second at maximum speed, which is very small compared to the Visa network, which does 2,000 transactions a second on average and 56 to 60,000 transactions a second at peak period. So our view of it is that if Bitcoin was designed to be, as I stated at the beginning, an efficient electronic cash system to be able to send small transactions anywhere in the world, that's not what happened on BTC, and that's why we had this proliferation of many other attempted digital currencies. Because they kept the transaction capacity small, the transaction fee on BTC is high. I checked yesterday, it was $20 US to send a single BTC transaction. That's because the capacity of the network is very small, and it could be hours, if not more, to get a transaction confirmed onto the network. That's why we formed the mission to have Bitcoin SV to scale the network so that we could have a more efficient way of transacting. On our network, last year, the median transaction fee was 1/100th of a US cent. I could send anywhere, anyone in the world, any amount of value for 1/100th of a US cent. That's a much more efficient system. BTC in the form of Bitcoin has not become one. And that's why we've seen this proliferation, which has really caused confusion, for people trying to understand digital currency. So the Keefe, honestly, is scaling. BTC has expressed a narrative now of being a digital gold, a store of value for people to invest. That's why the price has gone up, because these big companies like MicroStrategy and Square have bought up large amounts of coins. You hear about it in the news. Elon Musk with Tesla did it, right? For the express purpose of holding it for storage value, not to actually use in daily life. And we think that's completely the opposite of what Bitcoin was created to be. So I agree with Janet Yellen with that in terms of how it applies to BTC. It's what we're trying to change with BSV. It's also why we have so many other digital currencies that have emerged trying to solve this problem of creating some efficient payment mechanism or creating other ways to efficiently send tokens. So scaling ultimately is the big challenge for all of these blockchains. Ethereum, the dominant blockchain for the last few years for smart contracts and tokens, is running into the same issue. Their gas fees, which is their equivalent of transaction fees, are also hitting really, really high amounts, 30, 40 US dollars to send a transaction. And so if you create a tokenized market, let's say where you tokenize stock or art or financial instruments and want to do a lot of trading on it, it doesn't work if it costs $40 to send a transaction every time for trading. So the answer, honestly, is scaling a blockchain so that businesses, including the clients of the people watching this webinar, can efficiently use a blockchain for a wide range of payment, token, smart contract, and data transactions of all types for all industries. So scaling really is the answer. Thanks,
Jimmy. Again, to you, Sean, what are your comments in terms of Janet Yellen's comments on Monday that Bitcoin's an extremely inefficient way to conduct monetary transactions? Yeah, you're muted, Sean. Sean, you're muted.
I think that Bitcoin is sort of the on-ramp for individuals and businesses to digital transactions. And while it is definitely inefficient, let's be honest, paper cash is also inefficient for transactions. So if you think about it in the context of sending a letter versus sending an email, clearly a digital transaction is better. However, like the many points that Jimmy just mentioned, the blockchain network, the Bitcoin network is pretty inefficient right now, but we are going to see, as I was talking about, sort of that on-ramp or on-board of sort of the technology is going to catch up to, or is going to grow and accelerate at a pace that we're really just in the nascency of the technology of blockchain. So while it is currently inefficient, it is getting more efficient, and I think will continue to only become a hairier beast over time.
All right, thanks, Sean. Chester asks a very long question. I'm just going to cut it down to the final sentence. Do you think blockchain could help electronic bills of lading replacing paper bills of lading? Anybody want to take this one, Debbie?
Sure. I actually just, I've guest spoken at a admiralty and law class. And so we were talking exactly about this point. And there's no question. I mean, blockchain and electronic currency go hand in hand in that they can transmit data and payment at the same time. And that's one of the greatest efficiencies of this whole technology and protocol. So it can replace bills of lading. That I think that it goes like anything else in any change in any industry. It's been a standard for many, many years. And there are companies out there that are experimenting with this and shipping for sure. But I think it's a custom thing more than anything else, is there has to be some change. And there's also some UCC matters that you have to go through and analyze and make sure that it meets all those requirements. And so I think if you go through those, you can see that it meets it, but I do think that there's an industry change that would have to be accepting of that. But can it do it? Yes. Will the industry accept it? That's a whole other point. So, yeah.
Hey, Debbie, do you want to address that point quickly?
Sorry, yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
Bill of lading and any type of supply chain management or any type of business record and documentation is a perfect use case for blockchain technology, because all a blockchain is a way to keep records, as well as Debbie said, to transmit payments along with records that is shared so that you don't have to trust one person. I don't have to trust Daniel or his company to keep the records and access them only when he allows me to do so. If all of the world could access the same record keeping system in real time at the same time, and we could have trust to what we would call a universal source of truth. Everyone sees the records of a product moving across the supply chain from port to port, from manufacturer to wholesaler to distributor, and bills of lading, invoices could be processed in a way that we can all see in real time where it's happening, and payments are made quickly through digital wallets. It would make our system so much more efficient because we would cut down on the need for all these middle companies, middlemen and women, to have to process paper in order to move along the shipment of goods as well as the payment for them. It could be all much more automated, as well as having information trusted in real time because we're all looking at the same ledger that we can all agree is an accurate representation of the truth.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. Next question I've got, I'd like to sort of move reasonably quickly through the rest of them, albeit there are 107 of these questions now, and with 20 minutes to go, realistically, we're not going to. But so Rich Levine is asking, if I'm a US taxpayer, I buy Bitcoin and then use it to buy something else, to have a gain or loss for tax purposes. Who'd like to pick that one up? Daniel?
Well, let me start with two caveats, Will. First, I'm not a tax lawyer, and second, I can't give
Understood.
legal advice in this context. But as a general matter, yes, the IRS in the United States regards Bitcoin and many types of cryptocurrencies as property, which is interesting because other regulators have taken a different approach. But for purposes of the US Internal Revenue Service, many cryptocurrencies are property. And as a consequence of that, you're required to pay short-term or long-term capital gains. And your basis is essentially the US dollar value equivalent of the Bitcoin when you received it. And then your gain or loss is the value in US dollars at the time that it's spent.
All right, thanks, Daniel. I'm going to take Tim's question, just Tim, nothing else. He is asking a question that a number of people have raised, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we looked at. Josh, the issue of privacy. One of the accusations leveled at cryptocurrencies is that they can be used for money laundering because they're anonymous, and you know, various other accusations like that. What are the legal issues around privacy and data privacy?
So there's two questions there, I think, is sort of the AML, anti-money laundering laws and how they fit in crypto, and how data privacy and security laws touch on crypto. On the first question, you know, if you're a company that's handling somebody else's money, then you're in the world where you have to abide by anti-money laundering laws, and you have to know who your customers, who you're dealing with, and there's a whole set of reporting and record keeping requirements that fall upon you, whether or not that money is in the form of fiat, and in many states in crypto, not every state. On the other hand, there are these questions of data privacy. So there's a bit of a complicated kind of a nuance to what we're talking about when we talk about anonymity in cryptocurrency or blockchain technology. It's not really anonymous. It's pseudonymous, which means it's sort of like if someone sees your bank account statement and your name is scratched out, but your bank account number is there. You know, we know, the bank knows that your bank account number is tied to your name. So the number is, it's a pseudonym for your account, right? It's the same thing here. If you're able to peg my name or my bank information to my network address on any network that I deal in, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, then you'll be able to identify who's behind those transactions. You'll know it's me, assuming that I'm the only person with a private key to that network address. And so the question, one question that's kind of crucial that arises under, not so much under US law, but more under like European data protection laws and maybe Brazilian law, is when does a pseudonymous kind of string of numbers and letters become personally identifiable information or information that's so important that it should be protected under those laws. So that if you're a company that stores that information, you have to abide by certain protocols. And that's a bit of an open question. If that's a bit of an open question, and whether hashes of that data, whether those hashes are considered protected information is confusing. And these aren't questions I address directly because I'm not a data privacy person and I'm not an EU lawyer. But they've come across my desk and I've had to identify them and say, oh, these are the people you need to talk to. And there are certainly shops that focus on those. But that's where kind of the threshold questions are. Is like, if I'm a company and I come into possession of the fact that this person is tied to this address, or I just come into the string of numbers and letters, what do I have to do with that data? What kind of protections fall upon it? And on the data privacy side, there's California law, the CCPA, which is a relatively new law. There's the GDPR in EU, other laws around the world that might affect what you have to do and the rights of the consumers that are subject to the data. And then on the other side of things, there's KYC and anti-money laundering obligations that fall upon you if you're holding someone else's money, essentially.
Okay, thanks, Josh. I'm just going to come to Jimmy for your take on this issue of privacy. Then Debbie and Sean, I'd like to talk about perhaps the jobs in legal jobs, particularly in terms of Bitcoin and blockchain.
Well, Josh is correct that digital currency transactions are not anonymous. That's a big misconception out there. They are pseudonymous, as he pointed out. It's like the equivalent of an IP address, right, where you're accessing, the internet from, versus which can be tied ultimately to you with the right type of investigation. So there is some level of identification that can link a digital currency wallet address to you. And as he explained, the companies that operate the space, an exchange, a company that is processing the payments of digital currencies, are now under much more pressure to collect information about you as a customer so that they would have privacy obligations with respect to the information they collect. I want to address a different privacy issue, which is use of blockchain to record personal information to the chain, or what's called hash information, or record a hash of the data to the chain. That's something that's being explored a lot on our blockchain because we're scaling so big, we can handle so much more data capacity, and other chains are doing this. For example, there's a company in the US in our ecosystem building an electronic health records platform on the Bitcoin SV blockchain to give you as a patient more control of your own data, because in the US, our healthcare data is spread across all of our different providers, to consolidate it in one place and allow you to actually be able to make small amounts of Bitcoin SV micropayments by allowing companies, let's say a pharmaceutical company who wants to get some data for research, to access your data, and they'll actually pay you to access it. So it's giving more power to you as a consumer. So that's a great new potential use of blockchain technology and digital currency payments, but it raises a privacy issue which lawyers will have to deal with. And if I was still practicing law, I'm sure I'd be confronting this, which is how do you best manage the protection of the privacy of personal information or other confidential information that might get recorded to, or if not on the blockchain itself, accessed through blockchain lock and unlock controls. You're going to see that, I believe, as a big issue for privacy and data security lawyers in the years to come, because one of the powers of blockchain technology is to make data more accessible to the world, where everyone can access your healthcare records or whatever, your ID information from the same source. Because we predict a day where your ID information will be managed from a single place on the blockchain. And therefore you don't have to have separate Facebook login, Google login, where if you stored all your ID information in one place, anytime you needed to authorize an application to access it, it could all be accessed from the same place. Great for efficiency. For the privacy lawyers out there, they're probably thinking, how am I going to ensure that this meets GDPR requirements as well as the requirements in the United States and other countries? So that's an important privacy issue to consider as more personal and confidential information gets either recorded directly on a blockchain or the ability to access it happens through a blockchain.
Thanks, Jimmy. I do recall you previously told us you were a recovering attorney, so thanks for that. Debbie, yeah, the question I promised you, Andres Castillo asks us, a 1L was wondering how to get into the crypto sphere of law while working for a big law firm. Is it possible? Would they have to work for a venture capital firm, a venture startup first, for example? And on that wider question, what are the roles going to be for attorneys in the future?
So as you've seen, thank you for that question, Andreas. As you've all seen, one of my favorite in a very dark kind of way professors at Albany Law School, my contracts professor, some of you may recall this if you were there years ago when I was, is he would say, there are no questions. There are no answers. Sorry, got it wrong. There are no answers, only more questions. And so I think that the interesting thing about going into this area of law there are no answers. And so there's so many opportunities as a lawyer to grow and to help find the answers. And so if you're in big law, absolutely there's opportunities. A lot of law firms, if I'm always looking at all the different law firms every day that are coming out with either technology groups or blockchain groups, or they're really looking for that expertise. Who knows that? And if you're a junior level associate and you can show that value to the firm that wants to differentiate themselves, then that's a tremendous opportunity. That makes you very useful and helpful and valuable to the law firm. And then there's other opportunities as well too. So if you want to help change the law, make the law, you can go into government, become, I've known people that have gone into whether it's a state or a more of a federal regulator to help determine what are the needs. And then there's whole host of opportunities within, we can all talk about this, within either the technology sector or the financial sector, to, if you're versed in what the legal implications are here. And so I think that you might learn how to quarterback some of these issues. No one of us really knows how to answer all of these issues. I think I heard Josh say that loud and clear, and all of us said that pretty loud, is that we don't all know all the answers. But if you quarterback and you know enough of just like you're learning in law school, to identify issues and to know, hey, I can go to that tax lawyer and work with him and collaborate with him to figure out some of these answers, or that securities lawyer, or that property lawyer, because of you have to know who are the people around you to help formulate the ideas and be able to identify them. Then there's tremendous opportunity to, again, in all of these areas, whether in-house, whether at a firm, whether in government, whether in venture capital.
Well, that professor was definitely right, Debbie, because we've got 116 questions now. There are only questions. Sean, I mean, you're a recent JD. You've recently come through that. What would, if you were advising Andres, how do you get into crypto? Is it through big law, or is it through a different pathway? Yeah, you're muted again.
I think the answer is that big law is kind of going to have to come back to crypto, and that what my experience has been so far is that law firms are not prepared to handle cryptocurrencies, and financial firms really aren't either. Sort of what's so powerful about blockchain and cryptocurrencies is that it was really organically built through the internet, and it's this new technology that is really disrupting incumbent industries, and I think it's sort of when you're in any new technology, it's hard to when you're at the forefront of new technologies, it's hard to have the law keep up with the technology. So I think if you're interested in getting working with cryptocurrencies, you probably would be, well, I guess it depends what your level of risk is, whether you want to work at a startup or whether you want to be a regulator. But there's tons of opportunities. However, I think big law is not there yet.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Speak a little bit to that.
Josh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a dilemma because even if you're at I run a boutique firm and we want to have, if we're hiring, we're not hiring right now, we're looking at folks who have big law backgrounds, right? And so it ends up like it's hard to justify hiring someone who doesn't have that background because you kind of don't know what you're getting in some respects, especially when you're small and it's harder to take risks. But what helps is seeing your writing, right? So if you're trying to break into the industry, what I tell every junior lawyer or even law student is just write stuff and publish it. If you can't publish it if you can't get CoinDesk or Block or whoever to publish your work, then just put it on Medium and tweet about it. And this way you have a record of like your thoughts on all the crazy stuff that's happening in the industry. And don't, if you work at a law firm, don't ask permission to do it. Just do it, because that's what I did, and it really helped. Be creative, like get someone to get you a Clubhouse invite. I have 7. If you want to, DM me to kind of like get one, and use that to start rooms and invite people who you want to speak to like become someone who's doing something on Clubhouse and hosting these rooms on creative crypto discussions. Like just make it up as you go along, and just over time, what'll happen is you'll have forced your way into the space. And people will come to you because they'll see you as someone who thinks and writes well and who is good at community building. And it's not something lawyers typically do. But if you want to have a career path in it, I mean, that's one way to go about it, right? The other way is to go to big law and like beg partners to put you on projects and work on those projects and then, move out to a boutique shop maybe, which is perfectly reasonable as well. But there are just so many paths to the industry that you can go in-house at Coinbase, right? Like you can go in-house at one of these firms that's really growing, like BlockFi. There's just so many different pathways that it's an open question, I think.
Thanks, Josh. I'm just going to have two final questions. I want to put this next one just to Jimmy because it's come up a few times. It's Jimmy, so the issue of volatility. How does crypto solve that? This is a question from James Dodd, and a number of others have asked it. How does it solve the volatility issue of its valuation? At what stabilization rate would full adoption be possible?
The answer is to focus on building real value based on real utility of the digital currency and asset, as opposed to what I'll be frank to say is today's digital currency, cryptocurrency value is completely speculative. For anyone who thinks otherwise, they're completely wrong. I can't tell you why today BTC is worth $50,000 versus $10,000, or why Ethereum is worth $2,000 versus $200. It's not based on actual utility, it's based upon investors' belief in what the potential of it will be, because neither of those blockchains or digital currencies are used anywhere at the scale and for useful functions that would give rise to the value. So that's why we're focusing with Bitcoin SV on scaling a blockchain really big so we can handle huge volumes of transactions at a higher velocity for more payment and data transactions so that the value of the coin actually is based on real utility. We view what Bitcoin is as a data as the most valuable commodity of the digital era. And if it becomes useful for both payments efficiently, as well as all these blockchain data uses we talked about, such as BDI or healthcare data or supply chain management, the more it's used for real useful business function, the more real value it will have, and its volatility should decrease because it will be based on utility. So that's really the answer. I can't tell you where there's the magic number at where the volatility seems right or not right, but that's why you see these wild swings, because the actual value of digital currencies today is not really tied to inherent value. That's what we're trying to fix, and that's what I would encourage everyone across the entire digital currency and blockchain ecosystem to focus on. And that's what we're doing with Satoshi Vision, Bitcoin SV.
Thanks, Jimmy. So final question to all of you, just if I could get a quick answer from each of you. What is the key trend that non-lawyers and lawyers should be looking at? What's going to be the big change that you see coming down the pipe in this field? Debbie, do you want to go first for that one?
I just think continued innovative uses. I mean, every day, those of us that are in the field, we see it and we are just like, wow, who would have thought of that? So innovative use cases using the technology.
Thanks, Debbie. Josh?
Yeah, it's kind of impossible to predict, but certainly in the near term, NFTs are going to be a big deal. Celebrities are going to be kind of like tied to the whole NFT space, and it's going to affect the whole Ethereum ecosystem, I think. Decentralized exchanges specifically for NFTs are probably going to emerge more. There's only a few now, but there will be more. And the legal issues around those are going to be pretty fascinating, I think.
Thanks, Josh. Daniel?
Yeah, on that score, decentralized finance generally, removing financial institutions as an intermediary from financial transactions.
Thanks, Daniel. Sean?
So I would echo the point of decentralization, that I really think that what we're seeing right now is the power of the internet, and it's fully globalizing, and what cryptocurrencies and what blockchain is able to do is really be at the forefront of the internet, of the this 2.0, the next generation of the internet.
Thanks, Sean. And Jimmy?
All of those trends that have been identified, I think, are good and key, and they can all be encapsulated in one message that I think the audience should open their minds to, that all blockchain and digital currency technology is igniting the power of data. A blockchain protocol and digital currency network is just a distributed way of sending data. The Bitcoin protocol is a data network protocol, just like IP protocol was created to power the internet. So all of these uses we're talking about take advantage of the ability to send, record, access, retrieve, compute with, manage data that is kept not just by one company or person, but can be confirmed and viewed and accessed publicly from anyone across the world, because it's kept by many people. Once you open your mind to the fact that all we're talking about is a more powerful way to have a data network that's distributed as opposed to kept in one place, you can open your minds to all of the great potential of blockchain and all forms of digital currencies.
Thanks, Jimmy. And before I sign off, Debbie, can we have your 30-second pitch for the new course that you are going to be launching in Spring 1 as part of Albany Law's online graduate program in financial compliance and risk management?
Absolutely. So it's blockchain, understanding blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and the law. It's really it's an intro course, but you'll have the opportunity to go as slow or fast as you want to go. I'll give a plug in that I've gotten some bits and pieces from all of our speakers here on giving me ideas on using a textbook that was written by one of our speakers, Dan here. And Dan teaches at U Miami, I teach, and Josh teaches at U Michigan, the same course. And so you'll learn a lot: federal law, state law, use cases, and smart contracts, and you'll really get an appreciation for it.
Debbie Hoffman, thank you very much. Sean Nguyen, thank you very much. Sean, Keefe, Dan Stabile, and Josh Garcia, thank you to all of you. You've been a fantastic panel. I'm sorry to the folks who asked questions. We had 121 questions in the end there, and that, I think that is indicative of the interest that there is in this topic. We should perhaps have gone far longer than an hour. What I may do is a sort of digest of some of those questions, and if some of you would be gracious enough to answer them, that would be much appreciated. But other than that, folks, thanks very much for coming today. Hope you enjoyed what you saw. Don't forget, 17th of March, we will have a cybersecurity panel in terms of looking at the future, pathways to the future, emerging trends in cybersecurity and data privacy law and policy. You can't forget it, it's on St. Patrick's Day. Time is 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock. Folks, thanks for coming today. Enjoy the rest of your day.